Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to recap the Potomac River tournament. It was the fifth stop on the MLF Invitationals, presented to you by Garmin. I've been with Garmin a number of years now, and I cannot tell you how pleased I am with their whole entire ecosystem. From the graphs to the trolling motor, just top notch. Really happy to have them as one of my sponsors, because I've mentioned this before, but Garmin would be a brand that I would use regardless if they were a sponsor of mine or not. They're super easy to use, and the customer service is top notch. So if you're looking for new graphs or new trolling motor, check out the Echo Maps. That's what I run. And then the Garmin Force trolling motor. I finished 74th in the event. Really disappointing because the Potomac River is probably my second most favorite fishery in the country, and historically I've had a really good track record there, except for the last two times we've been there. The river's also changed a lot since back in the day. Used to, it had lots and lots and lots of milfoil, and there's not a lot of milfoil there anymore. There's places that has some, but not the vast acres and acres that it used to. There's a lot of hydrilla now. There's lots and lots of eelgrass, and then some other grasses. I'm not sure what stargrass, or I'm not certain on the terminology of those. So, I kind of rethought my thought process going into this event on, because a lot of times since I've been there so much, I've caught fish up and down the river from Washington, D.C. all the way to, 25 miles south of takeoff. And, a lot of times, in practice, I maybe run around too much. So I kind of really wanted to narrow my focus for this event. So the first practice day, I just went to some historical places that were, I've caught them in the past. Actually, the first morning of practice, I spent about the first hour just running up and down the river, looking at, where there was grass and where there isn't. I used to fish up north a lot, Piscataway and Broad Creek, and there just wasn't any grass up there. I don't know why there's still none back there yet, but for whatever reason, there's not. There's a couple of creeks I've done really well there in the past. So I just kind of spent an hour running around the lake or river, looking. And then once I started fishing, overall the first day I had a pretty decent day of practice. I probably had 14 to 15 pounds, and I catch one here and catch one there. I never really felt that, any place I stopped on, had a big number of fish in it. And so I don't know if there's just not as many fish in the river as there used to be, or if they were just still a number of them that were, freshly post-spawn that just still hadn't made it out to where I was, fishing. So on the second day of practice, it was super, super windy. I fished about 3/4 of the day, really kind of struggled, 11, 12 pounds is all I caught. But there's one place that I stayed in there for like 6 or 7 hours, the second practice day. Historically, it's a good area, and, and the Potomac River, compared to a lot of other places, you can be sitting on top of like one of the best spots in the lake. And, if the tide's wrong, they're not going to bite. So that's kind of why I stayed in this area for a long time. I caught a number of fish, but, I didn't catch any big ones. And I just wasn't getting enough bites that really, thought, I could go in there in the tournament and just camp out and catch them. And then the third practice day, I had maybe a little bit better, practice day on the third day, but it was still pretty tough, I thought. I probably had, 12 and a half pounds. So going into the event, I had, let's see, really about 4 or 5 areas that I wanted to fish. And really, the way the Potomac used to fish, 5 is too many. I was always the person that, found an area and you just sit down, you fish, you put the trolling motor in when you get there and you pull it when you leave to go weigh in. And I think that was one of the keys to my success, back in the day. Just because you may go a couple hours without a bite and then all of a sudden, boom, you catch 2 or 3 on back-to-back casts. If you just stayed in there long enough, you get that random good bite. So on day one of the tournament, I started off in one little area. Actually, I had it to myself, which I was kind of surprised. And I had a limit probably in the first hour. And then I moved to my second area. I caught 1 or 2 there. And then, I went to my third area. I don't think I had a bite in my third area. Went to my fourth area. I caught like a 3-pounder. Went to another little section that's close to it. Caught another one that was 2 3/4. And then the last hour of the day, I went back in Mattawoman where we took off in the creek back there, and I caught like a 3-pounder back there. And I weighed in 13. I can't remember what place I was in after that day, but it wasn't a bad bag. Based off there was a federation tournament the week I think before we were there, and and like 13 pounds a day for 2 days I think was top 30. So I thought I might be sitting okay, but I think I may have been in 50th or somewhere around there. I don't remember for sure. So I knew I was going to still have to go out and catch them the next day. So day 2, I kind of switched up my rotation a little bit. The place where I caught 3-pounder at the end of the day, I started in there because I wanted to fish the place I started day 1 at roughly the same time. So it was going to be about an hour difference because the tide every day changes on when you have high tide and low tide. So I started back there and I caught a couple keepers back there, and then I went to my stretch where I caught a limit the first day, and I made like 2 or 3 passes up and down it and never had a bite. I don't know where those fish went, why they weren't biting, or if there just wasn't a whole bunch of them there, and I caught most of them the first day. I don't know. Then I went to another area that I had a couple bites in, and the first day there's probably 5 or 6 boats fishing this grass line down through there. When I rolled up there on day 2, there was like nobody out on the grass line. There's a couple boats up on the bank, but there's nobody out on the grass line. And I fished down through there and never had a bite. Went to my third spot, didn't have a bite. Went to my fourth area, and I caught, I finally get to my fourth area. I roll up there and I catch like a 4.4. It was the first bite over, really 3 pounds since I had been there. And a few minutes later, I caught another one, and then that was just a keeper. Then I missed one, and then so I kind of hunkered down in that area for a little while, and then I probably spent a couple hours in there for sure. And finally got another bite, and that culled one of my little ones out. So I still had like 2 13-inchers, a 4-pounder, a 2-something, and then I think pretty much that was it for the day. Just overall, not a lot of bites. The river I thought overall was fishing a lot tougher than I was really expecting. So I'm still going to have to refigure out how to fish the Potomac. Watching on live on my way home, kind of one deal that was going on was the bluegill were spawning, and I think that's where maybe a lot of the big ones were. They were way up shallow on those bluegill beds. And that's just something that I didn't get onto in practice. I never really got on that bike there in the past there, so I really wasn't looking for that. But, hats off to Nick Hatfield. He did a heck of a job, especially on that final day. He caught some nice ones. And he really got dialed in on that. Just not a lot of other guys were dialed in on that. So I finished 74th, which dropped me to 23rd in the points this season. So this next little part I'm going to talk about, points wise, this is the best season I've ever had. 23rd going into the last tournament, and what really stinks about it, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about it, is the fact that, I've lost money this year and I'm 23rd in points. I wish there was, a better, two of my tournaments that I've had this year, I was just outside the cut line. Major League Fishing made some changes on the number of paychecks for this year. Had I had the season this year, last year, I think I would have gotten paid in, I think, every tournament. But unfortunately, I've only got 2 paychecks this year. So if there's any young guys fishing out there, that have dreams of becoming a professional, one of the biggest things I can tell you is go get your education. Make sure you have something to fall back on if you want to get out there and do this, because it is not a cheap sport to get into. Have that education. And some of the young kids, they're going to make it. There's a couple kids on tour this year. One that lives, pretty close to me, really. And, he's had a heck of a season. And there's going to be a few like that, the Jacob Wheelers of the world that, just come out with the guns blazing and they stay with it that way. But anyway, get your education, so, you can have something to fall back on, because, there's a number of guys that, I know have to be struggling financially with some of the changes that have been made, in the past few years. I'm hopeful that in the future that, we can kind of maybe get back to what we used to have. That's kind of the whole goal is, for this to be, profitable and sustainable, so, I'm a business owner, so I get both sides of the equation, sometimes cuts have to be made, and sometimes you just got to make difficult decisions. So, hopefully things will turn around next year and the following years that, can be a little more lucrative for, us anglers, because, we've really taken the brunt of some pay cuts. So anyway, moving on, next tournament will be at La Crosse, Wisconsin on the Mississippi River. I think I've been there twice. The first time I was there, I missed a check, and the last time we were there, I think I finished 33rd. And we're going back about roughly the same time. But I have changed my game plan from what I've done in the past up there in some areas I'm going to look at and stay in versus, last couple times I've been there, I've locked down into pool 9. We put in pool 8. Last time we were there, granted I had a good finish, but I really felt I was like rushed the entire day because, we got to the lock in the morning and there was a barge in there. So then I had to go fish somewhere on 8 for a little while and then, try to time it where, I could get through, and finally you get through and you run down there and, it takes 20, 30, 40 minutes to get to where you're fishing, and then you just waste so much time. So I pretty much ruled pool 9 out. Because we're taking off up in La Crosse. We were supposed to take off up in La Crosse last time. I can't remember what the reason, but they changed it. we changed our takeoff location to Stoddard, which is, only 3 or 4 miles from the bottom lock. So, it wasn't a long run, but now it's like probably a 20-some minute run from La Crosse to get, if you wanted to go to Pool 9. So I probably ruled that out, because most of the tournaments, at least that I've researched, at least bigger tournaments, I think they've almost always been won on Pool 8. So, I think that just has a lot to do with, the amount of time you're fishing and not locking and running. So that's kind of my plan, stay in Pool 8, and we'll just go from there. But it's a fun fishery. Should be a lot of frogging, flipping, chatterbaiting, top water, all those fun things that, we all like to do. So looking forward to it. If you got any questions or comments, drop them below, and we'll see you next time.